I chose to do my project on implicit bias in the criminal justice system. Today we'll be covering what is implicit bias, the United States criminal justice system overview and statistics, implicit bias in arrests, implicit bias in trials, how implicit bias in the criminal justice system is affecting African Americans, and how we can fix the problem. The purpose of this slideshow is to educate others on the effects and solutions of implicit bias in the United States criminal justice system. What is implicit bias? Implicit bias can be defined as the pre-reflective attribution of particular qualities by an individual to a member of some social outgroup. In other words, it is stereotypes and biases that we hold unconsciously, meaning we typically don't know that we actually have them. These stereotypes affect our understanding, decision-making, and our actions in everyday scenarios, and thus it affects race, age, gender, and other types of markers. The United States criminal justice system overview. The system itself is a three-court system where each court is higher than the last. You start in the state court, you can move to the appellate court, and finally to the Supreme Court. However, most cases are tried in the state court. You wait in prison while you're awaiting trial unless you're able to pay bail. However, most people can't pay the amount of bail. Statistics. 2,303,200 people are currently incarcerated. While this number was taken in 2014, it has not dramatically changed. Of those 2.3 million, 475,900 inmates are Black, and 439,900 inmates are white. This is startling when you consider that the Black population makes up only 14% of the current United States population, and yet they are higher in the incarceration rate than white people. Implicit bias in arrests. Black people are implicitly associated with weapons. In a study done by 4 social psychologists, officers were presented with male Black and male white faces and an image of a weapon. They were told to click a button when they were able to recognize that the object was a weapon. The outcome: police officers were more likely to respond quicker to the image of a weapon when the face presented was Black rather than white. In a similar study done by Joshua Cornell, officers were presented with an image of a Black or a white person. Each person was either holding a gun or a harmless object such as keys or a wallet. The officer had 2 options: click one button to fire and click another to holster their weapon. The outcome of this one: police officers were more likely to shoot a Black, unarmed target than a white one. Also, they were quicker to shoot when the target was Black, regardless of if they were holding a weapon or a harmless item. These studies are shocking because it shows that police officers have an implicit bias against Black people and weapons, which would pose a threat to Black people considering they are seen as more of a threat. This is shown when you see that 22% of all people shot by police are Black. Finally, a Black person is 5 times more likely to be unjustly stopped than a white person. Implicit biases in trials. 5% of drug users are African American, and yet they represent 33% of those incarcerated for drug crimes. Black people are more likely to be given lengthier prison sentences for the same crime as a white person. Jury bias. In a study done by Justin Levinson and Danielle Young, jurors were given 5 photographs of a crime scene where a masked man was holding a gun with only his forearm visible. For half of the participants, the gunman's arm was light-skinned, and for the other half, dark-skinned. They then presented 20 pieces of ambiguous trial evidence, neither proving nor disproving that the man was in fact guilty. Then they were asked to rate how guilty the gunman was on a scale from 0 to 100 and to return a guilty or not guilty verdict. The outcome: when presented with the same case except for skin color, jurors were more likely to return a guilty verdict for the Black person than when compared to the white person. This would indicate that there is some implicit bias in the jury and or the judge in trials because Black people are more likely to be incarcerated and given lengthier sentences than a white person, even for the same crime. How does the system impact African Americans? When you have a felony conviction, you're unable to vote, you lose welfare benefits, you also lose the opportunity to have student loans, credit, insurance, and you lose the ability to obtain a business license. This limits their options after they get out of prison. For African American families, parents are in prison for longer jail times than white people for the same crime. This limits the amount of time that African American parents can spend with their children. As for African American individuals, mental illness rates are higher for those who are in prison, meaning that a higher percent of their population has mental illness. So what can be done? You can have jurors take the race IAT to ensure a balanced, fair jury, have officers take implicit bias trainings, and change our policies to get more Black people, especially those charged with minor drug possession, out of incarceration. Conclusion: Black people are incarcerated at a rate higher than white people, even though they only make up 14% of the population. Black people are also more likely to be judged unfairly due to the color of their skin during arrests and trials. And in order to change, we have to start at the roots and move up from there. Start with the prison system and work towards policing and criminal justice. Here are my references.